Alright, let's talk about Iuno. She looks like the full package, buffs, healing, and a flexible kit. But the problem is that her strongest buff, the 40% damage amplification, only works if allies can constantly refresh shields. Right now, only Augusta and Iuno herself can take full advantage of it. That immediately makes her feel more limited than she should be. So the real question is whether she's just an Augusta partner or if she can stand on her own. I'm also celebrating with a giveaway. Once the channel reaches 1,000 subscribers, I'll be giving out a Steam gift card so you can spend it however you want on Wuthering Waves or other games. Winners will be chosen from comments on videos posted during patch 2.6, and if it takes longer, then across patch 2.7. Subscribers will be prioritized when I pick winners, but any comment can enter. Just keep in mind, I can only see if you are subscribed if your subscription are set on public. Let's now dive into the video and break down Iuno's kit, her builds, and the teams where she fits best. At first glance, Iuno's kit looks wordy and complex, but in practice it's much easier to understand. The first thing to highlight is what she brings to the team. Her outro skill provides a reliable 50% heavy attack damage boost, and she can also give up to 40% extra damage while teammates are inside the full domain she creates by stacking shields. On top of that, the domain also periodically restores HP and stamina, adding survivability to her team. While pretty much any teammate can benefit from the heavy attack buff and the HP and stamina restoration, one important factor is that the 40% extra damage can only be accessed by Augusta and Iuno herself, since both can refresh shields. Iuno also has the ability to start her rotation with the full 10 stacks needed, called Blazing of the One Light. She gains 5 stacks immediately when using her intro skill and another 5 when using her Resonance Liberation, so she begins her rotation fully stacked. From that point on, every time she attacks she refreshes her shield, keeping the 40% damage boost active all the times. Iuno's buff from the domain are tied to her Forte circuit. To understand it better, let's break down her rotation. She has a default state and 2 lunar cycles, half moon and new moon. As soon as she enters the field, she wants to activate a lunar cycle to start using the vortex stacks called Sentients. By default, she begins in half moon. When she uses a heavy attack, she can switch between half moon and new moon. The goal is to build up 100 Sentients in half moon, then switch into new moon to consume them. In new moon, she deals more damage and heals her allies. This loop of generating and spending Sentients is the foundation of her kit until she builds up full Concerto energy. At that point, her heavy attack is replaced with a special version that lets her create the full moon domain. This domain stays on the field when she outros, letting the next character benefit from the 40% extra damage, or allowing her team to stay inside to receive periodical healing and stamina restoration. Her rotation at its core is simple. You start with her intro skill, which gives 40 Sentients, then immediately cast her Resonance Liberation for another 60 Sentients, reaching the full 100. At that point, she has 10 Blazing stacks active, amplifying her damage by 40% and filling her Forte circuit. From there, use a heavy attack to switch into New Moon, where she begins dealing damage and healing allies. While in New Moon, cycle through her Resonance skill and attacks to build up Concerto energy. Always stay in New Moon to maximize output. Once Concerto is full, use another heavy attack to create the full moon domain, then outro to the next unit. The domain remains on the field, giving allies periodical healing, stamina restoration, and if they can refresh shields like Augusta, up to 40% extra damage. And when combined with her outro, teammates can also benefit from 50% heavy attack damage buff, making the combo especially strong. Before diving into specific weapons, I want to mention that I won't go too deep into other limited options here, because I'll have a dedicated video where I analyze each gauntlet in detail and discuss whether Iuno's signatures worth pulling. This section will focus on the most important choices and best free-to-play alternatives. Her signature weapon, Moongazer Sigil, is her strongest option. It gives 12% attack, and once she uses her intro skill, she immediately gains both the 20% liberation damage boost and the full 36 defense ignore from the stacking effect. On top of that, it provides crit rate, which fits her kit perfectly and makes building her much easier. The best limited alternative is Verity's Handle, Xianliao's signature weapon. It has a crit rate main, similar to Iuno's signature weapon, and offers up to 48% liberation damage bonus, which Iuno can consistently maintain with her frequent skill usage. In practice, This weapon performs close to Moongazer Sigil, only about 7 to 8% weaker, similar to how Augusta's and Jian's signature were nearly identical in efficiency. This makes Verity's handle a fantastic fallback if you don't plan to pull for Iuno's own weapon. Another strong option is the free 5-star Gauntlet, Abyss Surges. As a free weapon, it offers excellent value and will likely outperform most R5 4-star choices at just R1. For free-to-play players, Abyss Surges is arguably the best alternative. For 4-star choices, the two Battle Pass weapons stand out. Stoneheart, the older one, has crit rate as its main stat and boosts liberation damage, making Iuno easier to build and closer to her signature weapon. Ether Strike, the newer option, gives crit damage and liberation damage. If you plan to take it to R5, Ether Strike will slightly outperform Stoneheart, but until then, Stoneheart is a better choice thanks to its crit rate. At R1, the crit rate makes Stoneheart stronger, while the R5 the difference is small, but Ether Strike ages it ahead. Other 4-star like Celestial, Spiral, and Hollow Mirage, with attack percentage main stat, can work as backups if you don't have the Battle Pass weapons. Iuno's kit gives her a shield every time she attacks, so she will constantly refresh shields during combat. This makes Crown of Valor the most valuable set, as its bonuses trigger reliably with her playstyle. As a result, her best echo loadout is the 3-piece Crown of Valor, combined with 2-piece sets like Sierra Gale, Gods of Wilkin, or Windward Pilgrimage for the extra 10% aero damage. The second best option would be running a 3-piece Crown of Valor with the 2-piece Lingering Tunes for the extra 10% attack. A third, less optimal but still viable setup is the full 5-piece Sierra Gale. I don't recommend the other two echo sets, Gods of Wilkin and Windward Pilgrimage, because they revolve around aero erosion and Iuno doesn't apply it, which makes them irrelevant for her kit. Similarly, I don't recommend running her as a buffer or a healer, with sets like Moonlight Clouds or Rejuvenating Glow. Her kit is mainly designed to deal damage, and choosing those sets will cause her to lose a large part of her potential. Sticking to the damage-focused sets will always give better results. Before getting into details of which stats to prioritize, it's worth pointing out that since Crown of Valor is the core echo set for Iuno, the forecast slot should ideally be Lady of the Sea, since it fits her kit perfectly. For main stats, Iuno performs best with crit rate or crit damage on the forecast echo, aero damage bonus on the 3 cost, and attack percentage on the 1 cost. For the 3 cost specifically, double aero damage rolls are slightly better than a mix of aero and attack percentage. If you can grind the 2 aero damage options, it would give you the best performance. If not, attack percentage is still a fine alternative and the damage difference is only around 2 to 5%. For substats, prioritize crit rate and crit damage as the top priority. After that, I aim to have at least 15 to 20% energy regeneration so her liberation comes faster and her rotation stays smooth. Once those are in place, attack percentage and liberation damage are also valuable secondary stats. Iuno seems to have plenty of team options, but unfortunately, many of the strongest teammates are limited units. Outside of her best-in-slot partner, Augusta, it's better to slot her into teams that can capitalize on her outro skill's 50% heavy attack buff. At the same time, keep in mind that Iuno herself deals significant damage, so she should always be built as a damage dealer rather than a pure buffer. Her best team is with Augusta, alongside Shorekeeper or Verina. This setup takes full advantage of both 50% heavy attack buff and the 40% damage amplifier, since Augusta can refresh her own shields multiple times. Another strong option is with Zani and Phoebe. Phoebe's outro buff applies to the whole team. After finishing Phoebe's rotation, you intro Iuno, do her rotation, and then outro into Zani. This allows Zani to benefit from both Phoebe's buffs and Iuno's 50% heavy attack boost. From this point on, for team compositions like Jian, Phoebe, or even Iuno hypercarry setups, I strongly recommend running Iuno with her signature weapon. The added damage to her kit makes a big difference and pushes these teams to a much higher overall damage. For Jian, the main reason to use Iuno over Mortify isn't just the heavy attack buff, but the fact that Iuno's personal damage output surpasses Mortify. On paper, Mortify can stack multiple buffs, 38% heavy attack, 20% attack at S6, plus extra from Static Mist, and Moonlit Echo Set, compared to only 50% heavy attack buff from Iuno's, but she still stands out as she contributes with far more damage when properly built. Iuno also pairs well with Phoebe as the main carry, with Chacona or Spectral Rover in the third slot to apply Spectral Frazzer stacks. Iuno then boosts Phoebe's heavy attack damage while adding her own strong damage. Lastly, you can run Iuno as a hyper carry. A good setup would be Iuno with Chacona or Jiang Xin, plus Shorekeeper or Verina. Chacona brings 25% aero damage from her kit, extra aero damage from her eco set, and even 10% defense shred from her signature weapon, or 10% attack from Static Mist. Jiang Xin offers 38% liberation damage and more attack from Moonlit eco set. Both supports allow Iuno to push her damage potential further as the main carry, but Jiang Xin stands out as she's the only free 5-star unit besides Verina. Iuno's sequences provide steady upgrades, but most of them are focused on boosting her damage rather than changing how she plays. Aside from her outro skill, which gives a reliable heavy attack buff to her teammates, the rest of her kit and sequences are designed to amplify her own output. At S1, she gains a 40% attack increase whenever she is in a lunar cycle. Because it's so easy to enter either half moon or new moon, this boost is almost always active. S1 also gives her interruption resistance when using Arc Beyond the Edge, her resonance skill, and the enhanced heavy attack from her Forte circuit. This is an important upgrade since being interrupted during her heavy attack could otherwise prevent her full moon domain from staying active when she outros. S2 boosts her damage amplifier by another 40%, but it only applies if the resonators can generate shields. In practice, this means the benefit goes almost entirely to Augusta and Iuno herself, since she always starts with the 10 stacks required. For my surprise and disappointment, I expected this sequence to also help the other teammates. It would have been better if it simply applied the amplifier to any team member without needing stacks. As it stands, it feels restrictive and mainly useful for Iuno and Augusta, while leaving other units unable to benefit. In my view, S2 could use a rework to make it less one-dimensional. Still, it's a good boost for Iuno's personal damage and for Augusta's teams, but nothing beyond that. S3 adds a large personal damage increase of 65% to her main attacks. This is a good stopping point if you want to maximize her as a damage dealer. Going beyond S3, the value of later nodes drops. S4 gives her and the team a shield, which adds survivability but doesn't impact her damage much. S5 adds 20% liberation damage, which is useful but not a huge spike. Finally, S6 is the true capstone, giving her the best overall increase and pushing her firmly into a role of a main DPS. At this point, she shifts from being a hybrid damage dealer and support into a proper hyper carry. In short, S1 is a helpful improvement for smoother gameplays but not mandatory. S2 is valuable if you run Augusta, and S3 is the best stopping point for Iuno's own damage. S4 and S5 are minor upgrades, while S6 is the big leap for anyone who wants to run her as a hyper carry. If you are considering playing Iuno as a hyper carry, her sequences provide good improvements. All sequences upgrade increase team damage to some extent, but if your main goal is only to boost Augusta, I wouldn't invest beyond S0. The extra sequences mainly serve to amplify Iuno's personal damage. To conclude, Iuno is a versatile unit with a kit that mixes utility and damage, but most of her real value lies in how much damage she can output herself. Her auto skill gives strong support through 50% heavy attack buff, yet everything else in her kit, her weapon, synergy, eco sets, stats, and sequences shows she was designed to be built as a damage dealer. If you have Augusta, Iuno becomes a near-perfect partner, amplifying Augusta's strengths while adding her own consistent output. Without Augusta, she still works in several teams, but her impact depends on building her as a proper DPS rather than trying to force her into a pure support role. Crown of Valor with aero-focus echoes and crit heavy stats will always be the way to go, and her sequences further push her damage potential rather than broadening her support value. In the end, she's a powerful pick if you are willing to invest in her gear and sequences, especially if Augusta is a part of your roster. If you focused only on boosting Augusta, having Iuno at base is already enough. Her extra sequences are mostly making her a stronger carry. She's flexible, stylish, and clearly capable, but she shines brightest when you build her for what she's clearly designed to do, deal damage. If you enjoyed this video or found my thoughts helpful, consider liking, commenting, and subscribing, as it helps me reach my goal of 1,000 subscribers. Don't forget, once we hit that milestone, I'll be giving away a Steam gift card to a lucky commenter from patch 2.6 videos. I've got more content coming soon, and until next time, happy gaming!